a great pleasure to be here. I am not prepared a technical talk. I'm more prepared like a kind of review talk on the subject of random tensors. I'm really happy to see that there is now this random surfaces that grow up into an attempt to create geometry and random geometry in higher dimensions, and random tensors are an attempt in this direction. So, I hope in the general ground we should expect that probably the random geometry will follow the same development as geometry from the study of low-dimensional objects like curves and surfaces towards higher dimensional ones, and also from extrinsic, that is embedded objects, towards intrinsic ones. And on the random side, we have this Gromov-Hausdorff sort of space of all spaces, which is a good framework to try to do intrinsic random geometry. Well, there is a question that we would not like random geometry to be concentrate too much probability weight on two trivial objects, or on the other side, not also on two complicated ones. So we need a kind of perhaps parameter to try to tune our knob between trivial geometries and more complicated ones. Among physical motivations, of course, we are interested in random geometry for many reasons, but for theoretical physics, one of the reasons, of course, is quantizing gravity, because we have this idea that it should be related to a functional integrand over geometry. We have at the moment a very good understanding of at least two categories of rather universal random geometries. One is the random tree, the limit of large random trees, which also are called in physics branch polymers. They have a certain type of Hausdorff dimension, spectral dimension, and they occur naturally as the limit of the large graphs which arrive in the 1/n limit of vector type continuity theory, so vector models, as we say. And on the other hand, more recently, we have this development of the Brownian sphere, or the kind of two-dimensional geometries of triangulations, which we understand quite well also as the 1/n limit of matrix model. And it is linked to 2D gravity, and it is still an active subject, but we can say there is already a lot of material there which allows us to understand rather in detail this space. It is very probably, although I think it's not a rigorous theorem, of spectral dimension 2. So locally it should look like two-dimensional, and globally it has this Hausdorff dimension 4. And I think here we are in the temple of where this has been so much studied over the years. So and these geometries have universality properties. You can get to this phase or to this phase by either looking at trees with fixed numbers of coordination or not, by here using triangulation or quadrangulation or hexagonalization and so on. So there is some kind of universality. And the way we can control them is because we have both some kind of exact counting of the graphing pole, so there is combinatorics, and there is also interesting one-to-one maps which allow to better make contact with the metric aspects and with the probability aspects, such as Brownian excursion and so on. So what about higher dimensions? So we have had already a large part of this meeting devoted to this question. So we certainly would like to handle some of the random objects, for instance, three-dimensional objects. We would like to have a theory of random nodes. We would like to have a theory of random manifolds, and perhaps random smooth projection in 4 dimensions, and so on and so forth. But we know that in dimension 3 and higher, it becomes increasingly more difficult to describe, to characterize geometry through complete sets of invariants. And at the same time, I would like to say, perhaps if we have too much of the mathematicians alone or the physicists alone trying to solve this problem without contact between them, they might go into directions which might not be optimal. For instance, it seems to me that at the moment, the mathematicians are actively developing theory of random geometry in 3 dimensions. For instance, I don't know all of this because I think it's probably a huge area, but I noted that there are models, for instance, of random nodes. For instance, the so-called petal model of random nodes developed by Adams et al. You have theories of random free manifolds based on, for instance, the idea that you take a manifold, you look at it as a Hegard division into 200 bodies that are glued together according to a certain mapping class group element, and then you put randomness on this element, and then you get a theory of random surface, of random manifolds in 3D and so on, and you can try to begin to compute like what is the average goes, linking crossing number of a node, what is the average value of such and such invariant node, and so on, in this random geometry. But I think if we leave mathematicians alone, they may lack some inputs that we like in theoretical physics. The idea of a one-to-one expansion, which could be like a knob, which would allow not to have all the geometries concentrated on very complicated objects, for instance. And also the connection to gravity. Let me just give you one example. If you define a knot by a crossing, and then you have, in this Petaluma model, you can put all the crossing online. And then the knot is like a very big thing in which all crossings are at the same point. And then you can describe the knot as a certain equivalence class of permutations. But typically, if you weight with equal weights of permutation, typically, you will put most of the weight on very complicated knots. I'm not sure what we want to do really. So there is also this rule of triangulation on which we have heard, for instance, in Johnson's talk. So, and it is a difficult rule if we try to mimic what has been done in 2 dimensions in higher dimensions. We meet some difficulties that were very well explained in Johnson's talk. For instance, it is difficult to decide whether a triangulation is really of a sphere or not. There are no easy way to do that. I was told by my mathematical friends, but I don't understand very well what it means, that it is essentially impossible to find a single algorithm in 4 dimensions to tell you whether a triangulation is homeomorphic to the sphere or not. We should also distinguish whether we are talking about the number of triangulation of a sphere, for instance, with V vertices or with T tetrahedra or simplices. In physics, we are more interested into this thing. But we can have V much smaller than T. This is because we can have many tetrahedra with the same point. So we can have vertices with huge multiplicity, so that the vertices may be much smaller than the tetrahedra. So for instance, we heard that there are some classes of triangulations for which we can recognize more easily, whether they are spheres or not. For instance, they are the locally constructible ones, they are the CDTs, and these ones are exponentially bounded when the number of cells grows. But for a general triangulation, which is not in this restricted class, the question is still open whether it's exponentially bounded or not, and this is because it's a really difficult question. There has been some confusion. People sometimes say it is not exponentially bounded, but what they refer to is to lower bounds on ST of V. Certainly, if you fix the number of vertices, then we know that there is super exponential growth. The number of triangulation with V vertices, this log should scratch. ST of V is bigger than exponential V squared, and it is supposed to be the optimal bound. There are much less upper bounds on ST of T, which is the question which we are more interested in perhaps in physics. For instance, the tensor approach that I will try to describe now allows to prove easily, I think it's just very short and simple argument, that the triangulations of homology spheres, certainly all spheres, plus many other things, all things that have the homology of the sphere, is bounded by T factorial to the 1/3. This thing you can obtain from the random tensors approach with very little difficulty, and I suspect that if we were to spend really some time on it, we could improve a lot on this, but I'm not sure at all we could go up to there. So this is one of the difficulty of the triangulation in higher dimension, that if we fix the topology, we are not even sure we are restricted to exponential growth. Okay, so this was just an introduction, and let me now go into the heart of the subject. Where does this idea of random tensors come from? Why was it for a while sort of stuck, and why is it revived? I like to hope that perhaps the approach to quantum gravity could be made rather austere. That is, you could have natural, structures that would naturally lead to quantum gravity. But I agree also with Bianca's talks that you can also decorate geometry. But it would be nice to also start with plain austere geometry like triangulations, equilateral triangulations, and so on. We could also start with complicated Hilbert spaces, but there is in a sense only one Hilbert space up to choice of a basis. It's at least one separable Hilbert space of infinite dimension, and then we could approach it through a truncation. And then maybe an interesting thing is to look at theories on this Hilbert space which are invariant under the change of orthonormal basis, so which have UN invariants. But UN invariants can be broken. If you have full UN invariance, the only invariant is a scalar product of two vectors, and this leads to so-called vector models with UN invariance. And you can see matrix models as a breaking of the symmetry into a smaller symmetry, and you can see tensor models as just a further breaking of the symmetry of matrix models. So in this way, you see this line of argument is very natural. And how would you do that? You will say, okay, if you break the symmetry, you will have a smaller symmetry group, and therefore you will have more invariance. And because invariance in these models are the objects you put in interactions, these things will have more interactions than this one, which have more interactions than this one. So let's see how it goes. So random vectors, they have exactly only one connected invariant interaction, connected in the sense that the underlying graph is connected. It is the scalar product. And you can the only polynomial invariant you can do are made out of products, polynomials of this elementary brick. Now for matrices, suppose that your number n, when n is large, it is rather rare that it is a prime. So it is very often that it can factor out as n1 times n2, and therefore very often you could imagine if I have this symmetry, it could break down into this smaller symmetry. And that's what the symmetry we would call the symmetry of a Vissart matrix, of a rectangular matrix with n1 rows and n2 columns. This is what would distinguish such a matrix from just a vector. It's not just an array of numbers, it has a structure, and therefore it reflects into these smaller invariants. And if you ask for this invariance, then you immediately get not only one connected invariant, but infinitely many, namely the traces of n dagger to the p for any p. Okay, if you do this one-step mode, you could say what happens if n, after all, is not just the product of two integers, but the product of three integers or more. You could very naturally imagine this can further break into this kind of symmetry. And that's one of the entrance door to this theory of random tensor, is to use that invariance. Well, you see there is this little tensorial thing, which means that if n1 equals n2 equals n3, this would be u of n1 cubed. It is much bigger than u of n1. So when people in the 90s started the theory of random tensors, they used the UN symmetry, so not this larger symmetry. So the difference is small, but we will see that it has great consequences. So I will give a little list of people who are working on this formalism or interested. And the two things I would like to underline is that, first of all, there are many, it's an active area, so it's an exciting time with a lot of young people. And I put in orange PhD students, for instance, in this domain. But it's actually, apart from me, the others are young. And I would say also what is exciting is that it's a domain which is really well situated at the active frontier between physics, because we want to mimic, in fact, not just random geometry, but random geometry for quantum gravity, physics, geometry, combinatorics, and probability theory. So what is the main difference between this U of n symmetry and UN to the cube, or UN to the fourth symmetry? The exterior tensor symmetry is bigger. It has to do with the fact that we are working basically with triangulation, which are colored triangulation. So now, the theory of colored triangulation was developed by the Italian school, and there's a book by Vincent on gems and so on, and it goes under the name of gems and crystallization theory. So the idea is that decremensional colored triangulations are simpler than general triangulation, and they avoid some of the difficulties that plague the more general triangulation. So the idea is, if you have a tetrahedron, suppose you color the four faces of the tetrahedron in different colors, and you allow only faces of the same color to glue together. Immediately you have a certain number of difficulties which are solved. For instance, the tetrahedron cannot glue a face on itself, because they are of different colors. Also, perhaps even more important, when you glue a face, you still don't know exactly which edge and which summit of the face will be associated to which one. But if it is colored, you have a unique prescription. You will glue the red face with the red face, but the red edge adjacent to the blue one with the red edge adjacent to the other blue one, and so on. So in fact, it means that you will have you will not have just manifolds. You will also have manifolds. We will see that have some defects, pseudo manifolds, but they will have a well-defined d-homology. Then you could ask, yes, but did you fool the baby with the bathwater? Is it that this theory of color triangulation, does it represent really a general enough theory of random geometry? I would say, I suggest yes, because, you know, for instance, anything that you can triangulate, you can color triangulate, because you have this idea I cannot resist to show you, called barycentric subdivision. If you have a tetrahedron like that, you just put some, you know, a yellow point at the center, you put blue points on the middle of the edges, green points on the middle of the faces, and red points at the summits, and then you have 24 tetrahedra and they are colored. And by doing this, you can change any, by refinement, you certainly can change any triangulation into a color triangulation. It means that if you were to solve, for instance, the question of exponential growth for color triangulation, you would have for regular triangulations and so on. So it's quite general. Now, the subject was revived when Ras van Goor found in 2009, he made the observation that this crystallization theory is really dual to a quantum field, to the family of quantum field theories, exactly in the same way that triangulation in 2D is dual to matrix theory. And in 2010 followed his discovery that this field theory admits a one-over-n expansion, but of a different type than matrix theory. And the first thing to know about this new one-over-n expansion, I put there, this one-over-n expansion is not topological, and this has to be stressed because we are so much used to the fact that the Toft expansion is topological. So by this expansion is not topological, let me precise really what I mean. I mean that it is not the degree associated to it will not be a topological invariant of the underlying manifold which is triangulated dual to the triangulation. And it could be perhaps topological in a deeper sense. So then you could also ask, okay, one thing certainly which prevented the development of random tensor theory is the following naive fact. Random matrices theory was born and in fact is best developed as a measure on invariants which are not the traces but the eigenvalues. Eigenvalues are related to traces by the famous polynomial Cayley-Hamilton theorem, but eigenvalues, problem is the tensor has no eigenvalue. So for this reason, I think this created a little bit of, this slows the development of random tensors because people ask, okay, what is the linear measure? Where are the eigenvalues? There are no eigenvalues. So what are the basic objects? The basic objects are not the eigenvalues, but the basic objects are the invariants, and the polynomial invariants in particular can be fully described very easily. A polynomial invariant is exactly a polynomial in regular DH-colored connected bipartite graphs. Bipartite is if you use the theory of complex tensors. If you use real tensors, you could forget the bipartite. But the DH-color structure is exactly what makes a difference between the UN invariants and the UN to the D invariants. So these invariants, they are dual to colored triangulations. We can see why. They are the interaction vertices for the theory of, for this modern theory of random tensors. They are also the observables, and they are the Feynman graphs of the tensors with one rank less. So it's a bit like Russian dolls, namely the random tensor theory at rank D is the boundary theory and contains the observables of the random theory at tensor at rank D plus 1, so it's nice. So why it is that it is dual to colored triangulations? Well, that was just the previous slide. Well, through the you can associate two tetrahedra which are colored when they are glued along the same face. You can have links of the corresponding colors, and these are the links, and the vertices become therefore DH-colored vertices because that's exactly the dual of the triangles, of the tetrahedra having colored faces. Okay, so I will now concentrate a little bit in showing you this correspondence here. But before I do that, let me first pay my tribute to beautiful Jean-Bernard Koch yesterday. So saying that just as he liked to count doodle, this gave rise to doodles of a new kind. These are colored doodles, which are just a little bit extension of the two-dimensional doodles. And we can try to count them, and exactly with the same techniques that he has been using, Benjeloun and Ramgoolam have given series of numbers which tell you how many of these objects are connected, and you see that they go much faster than the matrix case. For instance, the invariance of vectors, you have only one of them which is connected. I told you the invariance of matrices, you have one of them for every degree, you know, a trace of n dagger to the n, there is one of them for every value of n. But if you look at rank 3 or rank 4 tensors, these sequences are growing very fast. So there are, for instance, 30,753 diagrams of this kind with 4 colors, and believe me, I didn't draw them all. I draw just for you very lazy thing, the seven invariants of 6th order for rank 3 tensors. What are they? Okay, so because they are bipartite, you know, you have black and white vertices. Because we are at rank 3, we have 3 colors, red, blue, and purple. Because we have this invariance, the invariant must respect the color, that is the red, a red line from the white dot must connect to a red line from the black dot. And how many ways do you have to do that? With 3 black dots and 3 white dots, you have 7 ways. So you could tell me, oh, I see only 3 drawings, why is it that it is 7 drawings? Okay, this one is fully symmetric. It's called the utility graph, you see, of the complete bipartite K-free graph. So this one counts for 1. But this one counts for 3 because you see, you have the coloring, and this lonely line is different from these 2 lines. So in fact, in that case, the red color one is special. And you have 3 cases where there is the red, the blue, or the purple could be at a special position. And if you look at this one, it also counts for 3 because there is this single bar here which is of a special color, and it could be of 3 different types, but then that's all. So 3 plus 3 plus 1 is 7, and this would explain this 7 here. So just like Jean-Bernard, we have lists like that, but we don't have the full theory, and we would like to have more explicit formula. And also, it is related also to the question, and that Dominique was explaining this morning, because there is a theory of covering of a sphere behind these numbers. Anyway, so the next step is, I promised you to explain you why tensors of rank D, invariant tensors of rank D, are the vertices and the boundaries of the theory of rank D plus 1, and invariant objects of rank D plus 1 are the Feynman graphs of the theory of rank D. Well, this is because if you do exactly the same thing you would do for a matrix model, that is, you take as quadratic form the contraction of T with T bar, which is the obvious invariant which contracts all indices together respecting colors. This one is just one of them. But then, this is the part where you have all these rich interaction. If you put a certain number of this interaction, which I call trace B, it's kind of generalized traces, if you like, and this TB would be the coupling constant, and I do a certain number, I for instance take a polynomial interaction, then this would be an action, and then I would have a partition function that I could expand in this coupling constant. And now what would be the Feynman graph of this theory? Well, you should imagine that the objects which are there would give you the vertices. So remember, this trace of B are these drawings, so they would give you the vertices of the theory. But remember that between vertices we have propagators. Therefore we have Feynman contractions, and because this theory is bipartite, a T, which could be represented by the white vertex, can contract only to a T bar, which is represented by a black vertex. It means that on this, for instance, 4 different vertices of order 6, I could draw for you a vacuum graph by joining in all possible ways a black to a white vertex. Therefore, I need a new color, a color for the propagators. This one is a D plus 1 color, if you like. And when I have finished my drawing, I immediately see that I have no longer D regular edge-colored graphs, but D plus 1 regular edge-colored graphs. So the Feynman graphs are D plus 1 invariants, vertices, and also the boundaries, the observables of the theory, are D Feynman graphs. Okay, so I have to go on and to tell you quickly what governs the one-of-n expansion there. So there is an interesting thing in this colored graph, which is they come with a bit of extra structure, which is very interesting. In particular, you can define jackets, which are color cycles up to orientation. So at rank t, you have t factorial of the two of them. For instance, at rank 3, this number is 3. So you have 3 globally defined color cycles, and following these cycles, when you have a DH colored graph, you can write 3 different matrix graphs, so 3 different surfaces. It turns out that these are globally defined Ricard surfaces in the dual triangulation. So a color triangulation comes with a D homology, and also with an interesting set of d factorial d over 2 globally defined Ricard surfaces. For instance, in 3 dimensions, essentially you have the 0 line, and you have 3 such Ricard surfaces, which are matrix models obtained by defining a cyclic order consistently over all the graph, and up to orientation, it corresponds to, okay, I have the 0 color, which one is in front? So you know here, you have 0, 1 and 3 are neighbors, and the 2 is in front of 0. In this one, it's a 3 which is in front of 0. And this one, it is the 1 which is in front of 0. So defining which is the guy in front of 0, you have these 3 jackets. Then it gives you globally defined Ricard surfaces. You can compute the genus of these surfaces. And the degree which governs the one-over expansion, which for the first time, I propose in this conference to call Gouros degree, because there are so many degrees in mathematics that there could be confusion. There are too many degrees, but this one is really the one that Rivasseau wrote, so he's not there, so I think it's a good time to propose this terminology. So the Gouros degree governs the expansion, and this Gouros degree is nothing but the sum of this globally defined Ricard surfaces genus. And then he found essentially that after a scrutable scaling, an amplitude would be like, well, this n to the d is a usual scaling factor for a vacuum graph, minus omega, so it will decrease when omega increases. And as I said, this is not a topological invariant of the triangulated for 2G, which I do as a promising feature, because we don't want quantum gravity to be forever topological. Okay, so what is the relationship with quantum gravity? I will be quite quick, but this is perhaps a moment in my talk to pay my regards to François David, because it's through François that I learned that one can do Ricci calculus with equilateral triangulations, which simplifies it a lot. I learned about this Ricci calculus that there was all this length of decorations, and the amplitude of Ricci is you write volumes of these things and you equip them with lengths. There are complicated conditions, for instance, you know, the length of the triangle, the length of one side must be smaller than the sum of the lengths, this one and so forth. And in the 80s, François David was starting to probe the idea in 2 dimensions to use equilateral triangulation. And just then that I realized that graphs have a canonical distance, which is this distance which puts the length 1 to each side. So if you do that, the Ricci amplitude would simplify into counting the number of d simplices and d minus 2 simplices, because curvature would then concentrate on the d minus 2 simplices, and that term would be the cosmological constant term. And because the graphs, the Feynman graphs of tensor theories are dual to this, well, on the Feynman graph, this thing would be dual to the number of vertices, this thing would be dual to the number of faces, and if you have this tensor theory, each time you have a face, it's exactly like in a matrix theory, it brings you exactly a factor of n, if you are in a Hilbert space of dimension n. Therefore, the natural amplitude of the tensor model is this. But this is exactly the discretization, the equilateral version of Ricci calculus of the corresponding triangulation, and the correspondence will be this. So you will have a correspondence between Newton constant and cosmological constants, and the natural parameters, namely coupling constant and size of the tensor space that you have in the tensor model. Okay. Then it's perhaps a bit simplified model, and of course we would like to relate it to the BF and the Kern-Simons and all that, and to the continuum and all these versions of quantum gravity. And perhaps my hope is that we could do that perhaps by introducing also another category of tensor models, which I call tensor field theories, that I will have no time to discuss too much. But if we do that, we hope to have still one more approach to quantum gravity in higher dimensions, which I nicknamed the tensor track. So it would be the idea that this type of theories would be theories of space-time, not on space-time, and then space-time, you know, it's a fashionable word, would be like an emergent concept or an emergent construction. And for the moment, the tensor field theory, the tensor track, has many ingredients which I find promising. So I have listed the 4 that I found most promising. From the start, it is background independent because there is no geometry at the beginning. It's some, obviously, over all topologies, and also over at least all manifolds in any dimension, plus some quasi-manifolds, pseudo-manifolds. And recently, it has been shown that some theory of this type not only can be renormalized, but have asymptotic freedom. And then they escape the logo theorem, which tells you that you can have asymptotic freedom only if you have non-abelian K series. Why is it that they are asymptotically free? Why is it that they escape the logo theorem? Because they are non-local, if you like. So because they are non-local, you have to redo the analysis, and you find that these ones are very natural examples of asymptotically free theory. Okay. So if I want to position them in the landscape of all approaches to quantum gravity, of course I put them at the center. Don't believe it is because I think they are most important, just because I want to show you where they are. So, but of course this is by far bigger, so I should put an enormous sphere here. These things are big, but we would be at the intersection sort of these approaches. So we could say that it is a new way of organizing dynamical triangulations. It is related, obviously, to random matrices, and therefore, a little bit by a little bit a long path, probably to string theory as well. And it is related to everything that also Bianca said in the last talk, because if we decorate this with the variables of spin forms, we will be immediately in contact with these things. And finally, because we have developed sort of the idea that this could be like a new theory space in which to look at renormalization group flow, it is also a little bit related to the theory space of diffeomorphic invariant actions that is actively studied under the name of asymptotic safety scenario. Well, I will pass over this. This is highly speculative, but the idea is that maybe this could give us some scenario which would correspond physically to the idea that our universe would have condensed from a more elementary or more, I don't know, number theoretic or pre-geometric theory. Okay, so then I will show you the results because time is going. So I will say it's long enough now that I can separate it to 2 periods. I would call it the classic results in 2011-2013. So we have obtained the analog of what is called single scaling and double scaling in random matrices model. So this has been accomplished. This extension has been done to tensor field theories. We can see these tensor field theories a little bit also as analogs of the Kontsevich model of matrices, that is, instead of having the naive invariant trace of T bar, you replace this by trace of T bar AT, where this is non-trivial. So you break the unitary invariance, but only at the level of the propagator, so that it's a bit like organizing the degrees of freedom in a new way, but it's a minimal breaking. And then it can be renormalized, and in many cases. And in this setting, it is generically, the simplest theory are generically asymptotically free. And the person who discovered that shows that Benchedou. So for me, in this period, the 3 main surprising things that this new theory of tensors allowed us to discover, I put in orange. I think nobody thought that there would be difference in double scaling in tensors precisely occurring at t=6. And for this question of renormalization and asymptotically free, I think also it's completely new that was not conjectured before. So we had this feeling, for once in my life, I had this wonderful feeling that Claude told, maybe we are discovering something, not just learning something. Well, we see. We will see. And so we are trying now to of course, this was the easy part. Now we are in front of more difficult questions. So what was the main results in the last 2 years? Okay, so we had to try to better analyze these tensor field theories. We introduced the intermediate field representation, and we have started to better understand the link between tensor and matrix models. And I will say a few words more on this. I came from a a little chapel of mathematical physics called constructive field theory. So we have started the constructive analysis of these models, and the good news is that they are very, very nice toy models for constructive field theory. For instance, we could prove, we could control them non-perturbatively, we could prove the Borel summability of several models, and also we are beginning to obtain Borel summability and full non-perturbative construction of super-normalizable tensor field theories with stable potentials using a tool called the loop perplex expansion. In 3 dimension, Adrien Tanassa and co-worker have developed an extended theory which consists in summing over more general models and colored models, but still keeping this essential property of the 1/n expansion. So there is a kind of extended theory with a 1/n expansion in dimension 3. Quite interesting. And then we have there's also been some start of study of the theory through the functional renormalization group equations in the spirit in which Reuter and all this school has studied the Einsteinian theory space, that is a correction to the Einstein interaction and then flowing into this theory through certain rules according to a functional renormalization group equation. And more recently, we have also explored better that there is a whole range, in fact, of 1/n expansions obtained by boosting subleading terms in the regular tensorial 1/n expansion. So I will concentrate the last 5 minutes to give you a very brief idea of these 2 things. I have no time to go into these ones. So numerical flows, that's easy. I can flash for you a picture. So this is a picture. We show you, for instance, a numerical analysis of perhaps the simplest tensor model in rank 3, which shows very clearly, okay, the arrows, I would have put the other side, the arrows goes from infrared to infrared. So in fact, this is the asymptotically free point. So you see the model has indeed asymptotic freedom at large in the ultraviolet, but this is an infrared fixed point. This area is forbidden because the theory is on the circle, and therefore it is on the compact, and this is the suppression of modes that will be bigger than what the circle allows. And so, if you like, it's because we use this L2 of Z space. But if you zoom a little bit to eliminate this region, you can find a kind of new drawing, which is this one, which allows you to see more clearly this. And we have to investigate then what is really the nature of this phase transition here. And it looks that there is some progress right at the moment going on into trying to understand what is this infrared. Okay, I have just time to mention the enhanced model. It will go very briefly. In rank 4, we have a quartic invariance of this type and of this type. These ones look like matrices, and this one look a bit like, because this link is a bit weak, like a vector. So it's not so surprising that I will have, sorry, to flash a bit faster here, that normally we would have done this kind of scaling on the so-called, in our jargon, melodic invariance and necklace invariance. But we can, in fact, still have 1/n expansion if we use this different scaling. And if we use this different scaling, we have a model which can interpolate between, for instance, branch polymer and Brownian sphere behavior. And I will have no time to show you this. Yeah, I will show you this. It is essentially a model in which we can, first of all, it has some universality property. That is, we have not just one model, but a family of models with this behavior, with this critical behavior, which is made of sort of trees of necklaces. So this is a tree of necklaces. Imagine a little bit. And it's not that this tree of necklaces factorize, but they factorize in the 1/n leading order. So there is a factorization. So I will pass, I have no time to discuss the power counting, sorry, I will pass answer to you. But there is a key theorem, which is a factorization in the large n limit of a tree of necklace into its elementary components. This is a key theorem which allows us to write a Schwinger-Dyson equation for these quantities, and then to identify it with a Schwinger-Dyson. So this is a Schwinger-Dyson identity. It's a kind of equation of the type of that you wrote for planar maps. Oh, sorry, I have still 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Maybe I can. Yeah, so I can go perhaps a little bit less fast. So this term, quadratic, you know, is always a term that we have when we have what we call one particle reducibility in physics and a bridge in mathematics. So this bridge, you know, occurs in two equations. And then these terms are the ones which have no bridge. And in physics, we call this the Polchinski equation and so on. So you have here the bridge term, and here the non-bridge term. And this equation is just a bit more complicated than the one you have for regular Brownian sphere behavior, counting planar maps. So what happens is that you have two competing processes. And these competing processes are the branching processes of trees, like in a branch polymer phase, and the thickening of the disks, like in a Brownian map. And depending on the coupling constant that you put in the two interactions, you can have one or the other which is winning. So it is not so surprising, because this model was analyzed, the same equation, which is the leading order equation of this model, was analyzed in the 90s in the context of multitrace matrix models by a lot of people. And they understood there was a phase transition. If the critical maps grow faster than the trees, then you will find pure 2D duality, so this Brownian sphere phase. If the trees become critical first, then you will get branch polymers and the disk will remain small. But there is an interesting point where they both diverge at the same time, and then the exponent of this point is neither this one or this one, and this is called the phase of baby universe proliferation. And it's a bit like you have at the same time disks which thicken and trees join these disks. You can also have different exponents by tuning more couplings. And so it is interesting, because with a very, very simple tensor model, we obtain this behavior in the leading phase. But the interest of tensor models is that this is just leading behavior, and beyond that, you have sub-leading behavior, which is quite richer than what you have in matrix or vector models. So it deserves to be further investigated. Also, what I can say is that this is by letting compete, sort of, the most simple of all invariants, you know, almost this invariant with this invariant. So it's a competition between two very, very invariants which are at the very beginning of our list, and we have to continue and try to enhance and let compete this with further invariants, and that is a work in process, in collaboration with Bonzon and Lioli. In particular, we would like to understand what is the leading sector of this enhanced model in a more general case. Okay, so this is time for my conclusion. So I would say that very simple quartic tensor models can interpolate easily between branch polymers and Brownian sphere behavior. The intermediate field representation provides an interesting relationship between matrix and tensor models, and we hope that the tensor invariants and so on can be related to counting interesting geometric quantities, just like for instance, matrix models count intersection numbers on moduli spaces of surfaces with punctures and Gs. And we hope also that this could be an entrance point for developing this is my note to one cover of the organizers, to develop a kind of theory of topological recursion for tensor models. So in short, tensor models are indeed, in a way, multi-matrix models, but coupled in a new way which was not the standard way of multi-matrix models. Okay, so numerical exploration of renormalization group flow has started. It confirms that there are asymptotic freedom, but there is a lot of things to do in the infrared to understand whether you have one or several sequences of phase transition. And one of the goals is, indeed, we hope, just like Bianca was saying before me, that this will lead to better understanding of new phases of random geometry, which could be sufficiently universal, not totally trivial, and which would be truly higher dimension.
So we have time for some quick questions.
Do you need also in that for this kind of models that the number of time triangulations be exponentially bounded?
No, here there are many discussions often. For instance, with probabilists, often they like to have a category of objects, and they have to be exponentially bounded. But for field theorists, of course, the category of Feynman graphs, they are used to use a category which is not exponentially bounded. That's why, as we say, Feynman expansion does not converge. Nevertheless, the functional integral with a potentially stable, if you are in a Euclidean world, certainly is a probability theory that can be, in many cases, well defined. That is, you do have the functional integral, especially in super-normalizable constructive field theory, can be defined rigorously as a measure of a certain class of distribution. I will not enter the detail, but it is a probability theory, so it can be used. What is the question? Of course, the Feynman graphs proliferate, but they have to be resolved by sort of putting them into packets. Okay. So the 1/n expansion typically gives you a route to organize this. If you have a theory in which the 1/n leading graphs are exponentially bounded, you can take this as a starting point. But then you have also a rule to write corrections. And what is quite interesting in what we propose is a kind of new paradigm. The idea was, let's start with a well-controlled category of triangulation. For instance, the sphere. But in Fried mentioned, it's not clear they are exponentially bounded. So let's start with a more restricted category, maybe CBD or locally constructible. We propose different things. Let's start with a leading graph in 1/n. This one, by chance, they are exponentially bounded. They are triangulation of the sphere, but very special, even much more special than locally constructible. They are a kind of stacked triangulation. Then look at the next orders and try to organize them according to the natural way they arrive. What happens is that when you correct the first orders, you see both more complicated triangulation of the same topology, that is part of the sphere, and simple stacked triangulations of more complicated topologies coming together at the same time. Because a single parameter, of course, in higher dimensional geometry will classify, So it gives rise to new paradigm. Instead of trying to answer the question of exponential growth of for instance, spherical triangulation, try to understand the enumerative problems of these orders, and also perhaps try to relate it, because these are field theories, to the fact that if the potential is bounded, then they should exist non-perfectly. Yes?
Okay. Could you say a little more about this renormalization group calculations?
Oh,
how do you get this beautiful flow
yes,
that you show?
This has a long story. The first surprise in my
May I
life.
ask a question before?
Oh, yes.
It's related to yours. So, what's the renormalization energy scale in those?
N, capital N.
So, like for matrix model.
Yes, you take a theory. My point of view is that renormalization group organizes systems with many degrees of freedom. This hyperspace has no description except it has n dimension, and you let n go to infinity. So what simpler theory can I imagine for a quantum theory of many degrees of freedom? So n is in fact is, and if you agree you have a breaking, like you take only n which are n cubes, and then you have a natural theory of concrete tensors, then it would be still n, this n cube or this n, which would be the energy scale of it. You have a question? Sorry. Oh, your question was, can you tell me more how is done this? Okay, so there are two steps. Why do we say these things are asymptotically free and so on, and how do we compute the one-loop beta function and what, and how do we write the FRG equation, and how do we get the drawings and all that? Well, the story started with non-commutative field theory and random matrices of the concept type. If you have a model of matrices, usually you could trace of n square, and then you have, for instance, an interaction. Then you have Feynman graphs. Suppose here I change this into trace of n squared A, and this would be like having a propagator which is, for instance, 1/n plus n between an n and yeah. Well, it's a little bit. Let's say I can discuss this more privately with you, but let me say. The first surprise came in when we discovered that the general class of non-commutative theories are asymptotically safe. That is, they have the beta function which is 0, exactly 0. Why is it 0? because we knew that the 5-4 theory would be not asymptotically free. We compute the loop correction graph to the 5-4. It has always the same sign, no way to make it asymptotically free. What came in? What came in was the wave function renormalization, because in the matrix model, this thing, which is normally local, becomes this thing, which is non-local, because this thread communicates information to the external world. Therefore, there is a wave function renormalization at one loop, and not only a coupling constant. This is the main difference between local and non-local theory. It happens that this diagram in matrix models exactly cancels this one. That's why beta equals 0. And if you redo the computation in tensor models, where you have more threads here and more threads here, well, this changes sign. That's the analytic reason, as brief as I can, then more details should be. And these things, one should ask to Dario Benedetti, how do you transform this? Well, functional renormalization group equation needs, if you have an action, and these models have an action, you can write these equations if you have a good rule for the cutoffs. Now, all the technique is how do you put the cutoffs there to sort out this picture.
Quick question.
Just two short questions. The first is whether tensor models can detect differentiable structure.
Differentiable structure. I hope so in 4 dimensions. But I must say, it's very, very speculative. I think they can detect definitely knots in 3 dimensions. Because we have this gap in 4 dimensions, it's always the same. We have to understand 3 dimensions and the boundary of 3 is 2, so we are trying to better understand 3 dimensions. Once we have understood better 3 dimensions, I hope we can answer your question. Because after all, the Chern-Simons theory is the boundary theory of the Chinese theory. So we should, yes, we hope to guide ourselves towards this. At the moment, I don't know of any attempt by random geometers or probabilists to define a random theory of smooth structure on R4 or whatever. But I hope this could be a route.
And the second is if you could comment a little bit on the connection to topological gravity in 2 dimensions.
Yes. So, in fact, 2 dimensions is both simpler and very special. Because, for instance, in 2 dimensions, the family that dominates the 100 expansion is more complicated than the family that dominates in 3 dimensions. But the subdominant graphs have a much richer structure in 3 dimensions than in 2. So in a way, you have the kind of this planar maps are a good, interesting compromise. The tensor maps that dominate are fewer, but then there is more. The important thing, I think, is that in topological 2-dimensional gravity, you just have the single and double scaling, and that's all. There is no triple scaling. But I think here there may be triple or more scalings. So I think that what happens is that with the double scaling, you find these integrable properties of 2-dimensional gravity, and you can describe these numbers, these numbers which are given by intersection numbers of curves, by matrix model quantities. I have only part of the story in 3 dimensions. I have the tensor quantities, but I hope I can find what will be the topological theory that correspond to them. But I cannot say I have answered.